Welcome to another video. In this video we're going to be changing the brake pads and rotor on a BMW. This is actually a 750, but any of the newer series about 10,009 and up are all going to be the same thing. So what we got is I got my new rotor, and it's always good practice to change your rotor or have it turned when you put shoes on. The reason being, if you look at it, you know they're hollow in the middle, they have vents, and the rotor actually acts as a heat sink. So when you put on the brakes, heat goes into it. So when they turn them, they get a little bit thinner. Now, that's why I don't go for a turned rotor. I always just replace them. Not that much more in the headache of taking them somewhere and having them turned. Anyway, I was just going to point out something interesting I just noticed. This is a BMW brake pad, and this is off of my Dodge 1 ton. So this shows you how big these pads are. Now, they may have the same surface area, but you're talking about a 1 ton truck, first off. Second off, what makes the BMW better is it's wider. So when your heat goes into the rotor, it's going over a wider place, where the one off the Dodge truck is narrower. So the rotor is narrower and longer, and we're applying more heat to the rotor. Anyway, that's just an interesting fact. I think BMW did a pretty good job on their brakes. I mean, I'm a BMW lover, and I'm not happy with everything about this car, but, you know, it is what it is. So anyway, the first thing you got to do is there's these plastic caps in the back, and they cover up the bolt holes for the caliper. So you just look back there, find them, pull them out, and then you got to pop this retainer out. Now take note how it looks before you pop it out. Just so you have some idea how it goes back. It's just proud, boom, there it went. It popped out. So that was easy enough, huh? Then we go back here to our Allen screw. Just take an Allen screw and unscrew the 2 bolts. And what you want to do is also pry on this a little bit. And what that'll do is it compresses the piston in so you can get it off the rotor. If you don't do that, it's going to be so tight on the rotor you won't be able to get it off. But anyway, we're going to remove those 2 bolts, and then we'll move on to see what's next. So once you get those bolts out, the caliper just slides right on off of there. Next thing you got to do is you got to take this bolt out for your rotor. Now, sometimes, depending on how long they can be on there, they can be ignorant, they don't want to come out. I've had to drill them out before, but usually if you drill the head off, you can get a hold of the stud and it will come out. And you can pick those up, you know, relatively easy. But generally what I do is I stick me an Allen wrench in there and then tap on it with a hammer. You know, put an extension so you don't hit your hand, and give it a couple good whacks and loosen it up, and most of the time it will come off. So we're going to take this loose next. So the last step in disassembling is we have to take the bracket, the caliper bracket off, because as you can see, the rotor is not going to come off until the bracket comes off. And there's just 2 bolts. There's one here and there's one down here. So we remove those 2 bolts and this bracket will come right off, and I'll show you what we have to do next. So sometimes what happens to the rotor will get stuck here. You just give it a good whack with a hammer, it'll break loose. If you want to, when you put it back on, you can put some grease on there to keep it from seizing. Your wheels will also stick sometimes too. I just keep a big hammer ready and, you know, give the wheel a whack. Just make sure you whack it on the tire part. Don't hit your car, don't hit the rim. So when we put this rotor back on, the first thing you got to do is you got to get some brake cleaner and clean it up real good. because they actually spray, they either put oil or a thin coating of shellac or something like that on there, depending on manufacturer, to keep it from rusting. So you don't want that on your pads. You know, if it's the shellac, it gets all gummy and it heats up and cools off and gets gummy, and if it's oil, you know, your brakes just slip until it can burn them all off, burn all the oil off. But anyway, yeah, get a can of brake cleaner and just spray both sides of it and a rag and wipe it off real good. So then we're going to put this on, and we just got to line up our hole and put our screw back in. So that's the first thing we're going to do to put it back together. So next thing you want to do is put the bracket back on, and that's just a matter of putting it back on the way it came off and sticking your 2 bolts in. Now with these bolts, I put a drop of Loctite on there, the blue Loctite, just for the added insurance. Most BMW bolts come, you know, if you get new bolts, they come with, you know, Loctite already in the threads, but just gives you a little bit extra insurance. Now, I definitely would not put a Loctite on that thing. That could be a nightmare to get out. So we're going to put the bracket on next, and then we'll move on and see what else. So the next thing we have to do is we have to push our piston back in. So these things are great. They're, you know, under $10. This is a brand new one. I actually wore my other one out. I'd used it so much. But they're great for contracting the pistons. But what you do is you just get it in there, and this will work. These work on any car, which is great. And you stick an old shoe back here. So we stick an old shoe back here. Okay. And then we just crank on it. You know, you got to get the thing in the center here. Get it in the center. And then just crank on it and push that piston in as far as it'll go. And then we'll be ready to set our pads. But go ahead and do that next, and then we'll move on. Okay, so with the piston pushed all the way in, next thing you got to do, you can see one of these shoes clearly that goes in the piston. So you get that shoved in the piston, which is a little bit difficult, and then the other one just kind of sits here, okay, and the other one fits in there, and then you gotta kind of hold it together and slide it back down over the rotor here, so it's in between here. So sometimes, you know, you gotta wiggle it and move it, and you know how it goes, but it'll go back on there. So just get that sitting on there, and then you can line up the 2 bolts in the back to re-bolt the caliper. What I do too, these are what we took out of there. I put a little bit of grease on here because it actually goes in, this part sits in rubber. So I just, you know, put some grease on the end, and it'll smear all around there, and it helps lubricate it so you can get it in there, and then it also, you know, helps keep it lubricated so the brakes slide on it, because there's some sliding on that. So yeah, go ahead and do that next, and then we'll move on. Okay, so last thing we've got to do is get this thing in. That's a pain in the butt. Sometimes I've tried all different ways. You know, you start it up top, and you remember how it goes. It's got this little indent here that this has to go. This has to go past it. But I've gotten it to, usually I can mess with it and get, you know, both of these things have to go behind that. You'll see where it needs to go. And I get it started on there, and then take a screwdriver back here and pry this way on it and pop it in. So you just kind of got to keep working at it. It's not too pleasant. I don't know if it's a great design, but I guess it works. Anyway, you get that in, and you got your brakes and rotors done. So I hope this video helps you out. Be sure to subscribe, and, you know, take a look at, we've got tons of videos, see if any of the other ones can help you out. I add them all the time too, so, you know, we're going to eventually have everything for the newer BMWs, and I have probably 80 videos for, you know, some E39s and some older ones. So as they become available, we're going to be posting them. So you have a great day, and thank you for watching.